I've been a trucker for nearly 20 years. I've seen some strange things on the road, especially during long hauls through the desert. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened that night on Highway 40. It was one of those brutal Arizona summer nights, where the heat presses down on you, heavy and suffocating, even after the sun has long dipped below the horizon. I was hauling a load of electronics to Phoenix, driving a route I knew like the back of my hand. The CB radio crackled now and then, but most of the truckers had turned in for the night, leaving the road eerily silent. Around midnight, I found myself approaching the Painted Desert, a lonely, desolate stretch of road that always gave me the creeps. There's something about the way the moonlight hits the barren landscape, casting long, unnatural shadows across the sand and stone. It felt like driving through a place that wasn't meant for living things. That's when I saw her, a lone figure, standing by the side of the road, thumb outstretched. It was a woman, young, maybe in her 20s, wearing a faded denim jacket and clutching a small duffel bag. She looked out of place, stranded in the middle of nowhere. Against my better judgment, I slowed down and pulled over. She climbed into the passenger seat, murmuring a quiet "thank you," her voice barely more than a whisper. I couldn't get a good look at her face. It was hidden in the shadows. The only light came from the dim glow of the dashboard, casting a pale, flickering illumination across the cab. I tried making small talk, asking her where she was headed, but her answers were vague. She said something about needing to get to a small town further down the highway, but she didn't give any details. The more I tried to engage her, the more withdrawn she seemed, staring straight ahead, her face obscured by the darkness. It wasn't long before I started noticing something strange. The air inside the truck felt wrong, cold. I could see the temperature gauge. It was still over 90 degrees outside, but inside I felt a chill that settled deep into my bones. I glanced at her out of the corner of my eye, but she hadn't moved. She just sat there, silent, her hands resting on her lap, still as a statue. The radio, which had been crackling with the occasional chatter, suddenly went dead. No static, no voices, just a heavy, oppressive silence that pressed down on me. I told myself it was just a technical glitch, maybe interference from the desert. But deep down, I knew something else was going on. Something was wrong. We drove on for what felt like hours, though I knew it couldn't have been more than 30 minutes. The desert stretched out endlessly on either side, and there wasn't a car or a building in sight. Just miles and miles of empty road. I tried to shake off the growing sense of unease gnawing at me, but it was no use. The silence was too thick, the cold too unnatural. Then she spoke again. Almost there, she whispered, her voice barely audible, like the wind itself had carried her words. Just a few more miles. I felt a shiver crawl down my spine. There was no sign of any town, no indication that we were close to anything at all. Just endless desert and darkness. Something about the way she said it made my skin crawl, like she knew something I didn't. I kept my eyes on the road, but every now and then I'd glance at her, hoping for some clue, some explanation. That's when I saw her hands. At first I thought it was just a trick of the light. The dim glow from the dashboard cast long, eerie shadows across the cab, but as I looked closer, I realized it wasn't the light. Her hands. They didn't look solid. They looked almost translucent, like I could see through them. My stomach dropped. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, trying to keep my breathing steady, but panic was setting in. I needed to get her out of the truck. I needed to get out of here. I didn't care where I was. I just knew I had to stop the truck and get away from her. I glanced at her again, and that's when she turned toward me. her face. God, I'll never forget that face. In the passing headlights, I saw her clearly for the first time. Her eyes were hollow, empty, like two dark voids that seemed to swallow the light. Her skin was pale, almost gray, and her lips were curled into a twisted smile that sent ice through my veins. It wasn't a human smile. It was something else, something wrong. Before I could react, she whispered, "It's time." I slammed on the brakes, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. The truck screeched to a halt, the tires skidding on the asphalt. But when I turned to her, she was gone. The passenger seat was empty. For a moment, I just sat there, gripping the wheel, gasping for breath. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Had she jumped out? Was I imagining things? I looked around, but there was no sign of her. Just the endless desert and the soft glow of the moon overhead. I didn't wait to find out more. I floored the gas and sped away, my hands trembling as I gripped the wheel. I didn't stop until I reached the next town, my heart still racing, my mind replaying the events over and over again. I never saw her again, but I still feel that chill sometimes, even on the hottest nights. Our next story takes us deep into the desolate backroads of Texas, where I, a weary trucker named Jake, experienced something that would forever alter my understanding of the open road. It was a stormy night, and the rain lashed against my windshield, reducing visibility to mere feet. The clock on my dashboard blinked ominously. 2:13 a.m. I was bone-tired, my eyelids heavy after hours of driving through the relentless downpour. I decided to pull over at the next rest stop, hoping to catch a few hours of sleep before continuing my route. As I approached the exit, I noticed something strange. The sign for the rest stop was old and rusted, the paint peeling away to reveal a faded name, The Last Stop. An unsettling chill crept up my spine at the sight of it, but fatigue clouded my judgment. I veered off the highway, my headlights cutting through their darkness to illuminate a deserted parking lot. The rest stop loomed ahead, dark and dilapidated, its windows boarded up with plywood, giving it the appearance of a long-abandoned relic. A feeling of unease settled over me, but I was too exhausted to care. I parked my rig in the far corner of the lot, hoping to avoid any unwanted attention. The wind howled like a mournful spirit as I stepped out of the cab, the rain soaking through my clothes almost immediately. I hurried toward the building, eager to escape the storm, but my heart pounded in my chest with every step. I tried the door, but it was locked. Frustrated, I turned to leave, but then I heard it, a soft sound, like someone crying. It seemed to be coming from the back of the building. My heart raced and I hesitated. I knew I should leave, but something compelled me to investigate. I cautiously made my way around the side of the building, my boots crunching on the gravel. The crying grew louder, tugging at something deep within me. As I approached a boarded-up window, I cupped my hands around my eyes and peered into the darkness. At first, I couldn't see anything, but as my eyes adjusted, I made out a figure huddled in the corner. A young woman, her face buried in her hands, was shaking with sobs. A surge of sympathy welled up inside me. I knocked on the plywood, calling out, "Hello, are you okay?" The crying stopped, abruptly, and the woman slowly looked up. Her face was pale and gaunt, her eyes red-rimmed and filled with an indescribable sadness. I felt my breath catch in my throat. There was something unsettling about her expression, something that sent shivers down my spine. "Can I help you?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. She didn't respond. Instead, she just stared at me, her eyes a mix of longing and despair that gripped my heart with icy fingers. A deep sense of unease washed over me. I took a step back, instinctively reaching for the door handle of my truck, the desire to escape bubbling to the surface. But as I turned to leave, her voice drifted through the night, soft, almost a whisper, yet distinctly clear. It felt as if the wind itself carried her words, wrapping around me in a haunting melody. "Stay." My heart raced, torn between the instinct to flee and an inexplicable pull to stay. I hesitated, my hand still on the door handle, caught in a limbo of fear and curiosity. The whisper grew slightly louder, urging me to listen, to approach. I took a deep breath, my pulse quickening as I turned back toward the building, scanning the darkness for any sign of her. "What do you want?" I called out, my voice barely above a whisper, as if I feared disturbing the very fabric of this nightmarish scene. The wind howled in response, and with it came a chilling echo of her voice, a ghostly lullaby that seemed to beckon me closer. Against my better judgment, I stepped forward, my boots crunching on the gravel, each sound amplified in the eerie silence. "Please," she whispered again, her voice trembling like the rustling leaves in the wind. "Help me." I felt an irresistible urge to understand, to uncover the mystery behind this anguished figure. I crouched near the window, straining to see her better. "What happened to you?" I asked, desperation lacing my tone. Her gaze locked onto mine, and for a moment I felt as if she were looking straight into my soul. "I can't leave," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm trapped here. Forever." A cold sweat broke out on my forehead as I processed her words. "Trapped? How?" I asked, my heart pounding. "The last stop is a place of sorrow," she replied, tears streaming down her pale cheeks. "It holds the souls of those who've lost their way, and I'm one of them." My breath quickened as dread seeped into my bones. "How do I help you?" I stammered, feeling a mix of empathy and fear. She raised a shaking hand, pointing toward the darkened depths of the building. "You must find the truth. Break the curse, or you will join me." A flash of lightning illuminated her face, and I was taken aback by the despair etched in her features. The thunder boomed overhead, shaking the ground beneath me. I felt the ground shift, the weight of her words pressing down on me. "No!" I shouted, panic rising within me. "I won't be trapped here." But the wind howled louder, as if mocking my fear. I backed away from the window, my heart racing. "I can't help you," I cried out, desperate to escape the suffocating darkness. Just then, a distant sound reached my ears, a low growl, rumbling like thunder. I whipped around, the hair on my neck standing on end. I was not alone. "Jake," the woman cried out, her voice rising in panic. "You must go." But my legs wouldn't move. I felt rooted to the spot, paralyzed by terror. The growl grew closer, echoing in the stillness, a sound unlike anything I had ever heard. And then I saw it, a shadowy figure emerging from the trees, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. A monstrous presence, hungry and malevolent, drew closer, the very embodiment of despair. "Run!" the woman screamed, her voice breaking as the figure lunged. I turned on my heels, sprinting toward my truck, heart pounding in my chest like a war drum. I could hear the growls behind me, the wind screaming in my ears. As I reached my rig, I fumbled with the door, desperately trying to escape the nightmare closing in. With a final burst of strength, I slammed the door shut and locked it, my heart racing. I could see the figure looming in my rearview mirror, a monstrous silhouette against the stormy sky. I tore out of the parking lot, the wheels screeching on the gravel as I fled. The last stop faded into the darkness behind me. the cries of the woman and the growls of the beast lingering in my mind. I never spoke of that night again, but I would never forget the haunting melody of her voice, the sorrow etched in her eyes. The open road was no longer just a path. It was a labyrinth of danger, filled with echoes of the lost souls forever trapped at the last stop. I've been driving trucks for over 15 years, crisscrossing the country, hauling everything from livestock to electronics. Seen a lot of strange things out on the road, things that make you question your own sanity. But nothing prepared me for what happened on that stretch of highway in Nebraska. It was a routine run, a haul of refrigerated goods from Omaha to Denver. The kind of trip where you can let your mind wander, where the miles melt together in the glow of your headlights. The road ahead was the Devil's Dance Floor, a nickname truckers gave to a section of Interstate 80 because of the optical illusions that messed with your eyes. On hot summer nights, it could look like the asphalt was twisting and warping under your tires. I'd driven it dozens of times. Tonight was different. It was just after midnight, the sky clear, the stars brighter than usual against the flat Nebraska plains. I was alone, the only truck for miles. At least, that's what I thought. About a mile ahead, I saw them. Headlights. A whole convoy of trucks stretched out in a neat line as far as I could see, like glowing pearls strung across the darkness. Truckers often stick together on long hauls, but this many. 30, maybe 40 trucks, all moving slowly, almost too slowly. I flicked my high beams to signal hello, expecting a flicker of lights in return. Nothing. Not even a blip. Something wasn't right. I slowed down, keeping my distance. As I got closer, I noticed the strangest thing. The trucks weren't moving. They were perfectly still, parked in the middle of the highway, headlights on, engines dead silent. A chill crawled up my spine, but I told myself maybe it was a rest stop gone wrong, or a massive breakdown. Truckers helped each other out. It's what we do. So I grabbed my CB, switched through a few channels, and called out. "Anyone out there? What's going on up ahead?" Static, just dead air. I tried again. Different channel. Nothing. Now the chill was starting to settle in deeper. My gut was screaming at me to turn back, but curiosity or stupidity, maybe both, kept me driving closer. I pulled up behind the last truck in the line and parked on the shoulder. I stepped out into the cool night air, my boots crunching on the gravel. The highway was unnervingly quiet. No wind, no distant engines. Just silence. I approached the first truck, its headlights casting an eerie glow on the empty road. The driver was slumped over the wheel, his face bathed in the dashboard light. I tapped on the window. "Hey, you all right in there?" No response. The driver didn't even flinch. I tried the door, locked. That's when I got a good look at him. His eyes were wide open, staring straight ahead, vacant, no life in them, just hollow, like someone had turned off a switch inside him. I stepped back, my heart racing. I checked the next truck, and the next. Every single one was the same. Drivers slumped over the wheel, eyes wide open, lifeless. It was like they'd all died in mid-drive, frozen in place. I stumbled back to my truck, trying to wrap my head around it. I grabbed my cell phone to call for help, my hands shaking as I dialed 911. But before I could hit send, something stopped me cold. The trucks, the whole convoy, was gone. I blinked, rubbed my eyes. There was nothing ahead but an empty stretch of highway, no headlights, no trucks, nothing. Just me, standing there in the dark, heart pounding, alone. I scanned the road, my brain refusing to accept what I was seeing. I'd just been there. The trucks, the drivers, they were real, weren't they? I jumped back into my cab and gunned the engine, needing to get the hell out of there. But the further I drove, the more the silence pressed in. It wasn't just quiet. It was wrong, like the world had been muted. I tried the CB again. No response. The static was gone, replaced by something else, an eerie, low hum, almost like a whisper, too faint to understand but impossible to ignore. Then, up ahead, something flickered. Headlights. The convoy was back. I slammed on the brakes, my heart in my throat. The trucks were in the same formation, perfectly still, their headlights cutting through the night like before. But this time the air felt different, heavier, oppressive. I couldn't take my eyes off them, my mind screaming at me to turn back. But I couldn't move, couldn't think straight. It was like the road itself was pulling me closer, trapping me in that moment, freezing me in time, just like those drivers. Then, all at once, the trucks vanished again. No sound, no warning. Just gone. I don't remember much after that. I drove through the night, past the Devil's Dance floor, past the endless plains, pushing my truck harder than I ever had. When I finally stopped hours later, I was shaking. The dispatcher asked why I was so early. I told them I just needed to get off the road. I haven't driven that stretch of highway since. I've heard other truckers talk about seeing strange things out there. Phantom lights, shadowy figures, lost convoys. But no one ever believes you. They chalk it up to fatigue or heat, or just your mind playing tricks on you. But I know what I saw, and I'm never going back.